Well, that was a surprise. Actually, there I was, sat down ready to have a chat with you about a writing thing that we will come to, possibly next week, maybe the week after. But then Apple goes and releases some new Macs. I mean, just casually brings out a revision to at least one of these new Macs actually is very good for us as writers. Actually, I've obviously looked into it. Why don't I just tell you what I think I found? It's the new Mac Mini. That is the thing to be aware of. The new Mac Mini seems really good, and it's definitely cheaper than the last version. That might be the thing. Hello, I'm William Gallagher, and this is 58 Keys, which, as always, is for writers like you and me who use and who write on Macs and iPhones and iPads. Do subscribe because, well, there's always so much to talk about, and actually this week, strictly speaking, there's quite a bit. We should be talking about, well, the Mac Mini, yeah, but also the new 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro models that Apple released at the same time. But it's the Mac Mini, that's the one. For completeness, very quickly, the new MacBook Pro models, well, they're the same as the last ones, except they have new and faster processors, just as the new Mac Mini does. Apple describes it as very much faster. My current 14-inch MacBook Pro is a dream. It's the best Mac I've ever had. So if you're looking for a portable Mac and you have the budget, you go rush out and get one. Overall, though, all of these machines are faster than the previous ones, and the specification that really caught my attention about the Mac Mini is the price. It starts at $599 or £649. At the current exchange rate, by the way, that actually makes the Mac Mini about $150-ish more expensive in the UK. It's almost enough to make you think something may have gone wrong with the UK economy. Anyway, the thing is, in both the US and the UK, the new Mac Mini is cheaper than the last one, and that was a surprise. It's genuinely a better buy anyway for what it offers you, but Apple has made it cheaper. Apple. It's an upside-down world we are living in these days. There are a couple of important things to do with the price, and they are tied to what the Mac Mini actually is. So let me just say that. It's a Mac. It's Mini, but it's also nothing else. That's the thing. It's not a keyboard. No mouse or trackpad comes with it. There's no monitor. If you already have those with your current computer, well, then you're shrugging because you just plug one out and plug the Mac Mini in. Fine. If you haven't, though, then that's a big extra, 3 big extras to have to buy. In 2018, actually 2019, somewhere around then, I replaced my poor ailing 27-inch iMac with an Intel-based Mac Mini, and I had to replace it. I had to keep working. Long-term Mac, it was suffering. I had to get a new one. But I bought the Mac Mini for budget reasons, and actually budget reasons only. If I could have just got a new iMac, well, then I would have done. I mean, I'd have been very happy with it, I'm sure, but I've come to adore the Mac Mini. Back then, I kept the keyboard and the trackpad from the iMac, but I also bought the cheapest monitor I could, and that was a mistake. That screen gave me dizzying headaches. But over the next couple of years, I tried different and better monitors as I could afford them. Got to this in the end. I also actually eventually replaced that Intel Mac Mini when Apple brought out the Apple Silicon M1 version of the Mac Mini. I did just say that I adore the Mac Mini. What words are being overused in this thing? Mac Mini. I said I adore it, and I did, and I do. It was true when I first bought the Intel one, and it has been true throughout the time I've had the M1 Apple Silicon one that's on my desk here. But there was this patch in the middle where I loathed the Mac Mini, and it was for a very specific reason that I think it can't be as much of a concern for you anymore, but you still need to be a little bit aware of it. What happened was I bought the cheapest version possible. It was the budget reasons, of course I did. But that meant it came with very little storage. At the time, it had 128 gigabytes of storage. And I know it's really hard to define what you can do in what space. I mean, a gigabyte, what does it actually give you? And it was plenty for several weeks. But then after that, it was murderously limited, tiny, just hated that small amount of space because it came to the point where twice a day I would have to stop working to find something to delete because that space was so full up. And because it was so full up, it wasn't just that it was difficult to wedge in another document, it was slowing the Mac down twice a day. And the slowing down, it was unimaginable. Around mid-afternoon, somewhere about there, it would suddenly take several minutes to save a document. So there you are, middle of the afternoon, you're on a deadline, it's a news deadline. Well, you had enough time to weep between hitting save and it actually doing it. I actually had such a bad reaction to that in the 2 Macs, I think it is, I've bought since then, and actually in every Mac I will ever buy, I've gone for as much internal storage as I could possibly afford. I don't ever want to be back in that position. You're unlikely to be in it now because Apple will no longer sell you any Mac Mini with that tiny amount of storage. The new Mac Mini, the $699 one, it starts with twice. It starts with 256 gigabytes SSD storage. And I think you're probably going to be okay with that. I think so. Think about it. If I were buying just because of that bad experience, I would unquestionably aim for at least 512 gigabyte storage. I'd be looking at more, but 512 at least, and that pushes the price of the base Mac Mini up to $799 or £849 here in the UK. And yeah, that does obviously stop it seeming like quite the bargain. But that 2018 Intel Mac Mini I bought with so little space that, yeah, there are like rings of hair around this chair. That cost me £790 at the time. The new Mac Mini, even the very cheapest version of it, I mean, it's cheaper than it ever was. Like for like, storage space for storage space. And it's a first class Mac. Actually, the new one is so good, I actually envy it, even though I've got the last one. One more possibly important thing to mention. I know I'm going on about this. I'm obviously very keen on the Mac Mini. I don't seem to be able to shut up about it. But the important thing is the newness in the new Mac Mini comes from it having a new processor inside. But actually, it has 2 of them. There's a choice of 2 of them. The very cheapest models, very cheapest configurations of models, they have an M2 processor. And then the more expensive ones have one called the M2 Pro. Now, so far, we've only got Apple's details of the differences. No one else has got one to test out. But all that really means is that Apple says it's wow fast, and eventually someone's going to say it's whoa fast. Apple, like everybody else, it cherry picks what figures it's going to show us, and then shortly afterwards, others rip it apart in testing. Fine. Broadly, the end result is that Apple tends to be about right. Maybe it's just looking at the speeds and the specifications with a little bit of rose-tinted glasses. It's not a big enough difference that I care, and actually, I don't care about specifications at all. I only care about what we can actually do with these machines, which is fine, except when it comes down to things like this, trying to decide between different processors. What do they actually give us? What do they actually mean? Look, in every practical way, right now, this minute, there is no Mac that isn't more powerful, much more powerful, than either you and I can possibly need as writers. But on the one hand, we do more than write, don't we? And on the other, well, all machines, it's like they age. The faster the processor you start off with, the longer the machine will last you. Although, I mean, come on, these are Macs, aren't they? They are such a long time. That old iMac of mine, it gave me 6 years of use at about 12 to 15 hours most days. And then actually it still carried on for at least another year as a kind of backup Mac that I would occasionally go to. If I can afford it, I would rather get a faster Mac, because I know it might be overkill right now, but over its long life, the types of work I do will stretch it. I mean, maybe only a little, but they will. So when I'm buying, I do spend time considering the different processors and trying to decide about it. But fortunately, there's a very, very handy way to decide which processor is right for you. It's the cost. Where the M2 Mac Mini is the one that starts at $699. The M2 Pro Mac Mini starts at $1,299. Interesting though, in the UK, that same model begins at £1,399. It's like the gap in the numbers narrows for some reason. Being practical, your writing does not need an M2 Pro. It will be very well served by the cheaper M2, and I mean very well served. And here's the thing. I think it comes down to this. If you want to study the specifications, I think the real deep analysis is the new M2 Mac Mini is not so very much faster that if you have the old M1 version as I do, that we should upgrade. It is so very much faster though, seemingly, that I kind of want to. Not going to, but I want to. Yeah. And if you don't have the old one, but you do have a keyboard, a screen, and a mouse, all that sort of stuff, well then you can no longer buy the old one. So what's the difference? Go get the new one. Anyway, I'm going to go off now and spend the whole day writing at my apparently ancient-seeming M1 Mac Mini. That's it for this edition of 58 Keys. By the way, there are now more than 5,000 people subscribed. I thought this was just you and me. Still, 5,000 is very nice. I'll put the kettle on for all of us. Maybe you can rustle up some biscuits or something. Okay. Thank you very much for watching. Now take care of yourself. Write more, and I'll see you soon.